so, but
And I'm gonna, there's a chance that Lynn has come in a different connection, so we'll just let it open and see if it comes through.
Well, welcome everyone to the October 3rd Economic Development Board meeting. Have you all made it? Just for clarification, the Economic Development Board meetings are available live through Zoom, and recordings may be posted online or County of Huron's YouTube channel. You may be seen and or heard as a part of these broadcasts, and your name, comments, and or presentation material will become part of the public record. Please don't hold that against me or cause you not to contribute to the meeting. So, did everybody have a look at the agenda? Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Jamie, seconded by somebody? Thanks. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Welcome, Lynn.
good morning, everyone.
Morning. So, 3, declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Anybody see anything on the agenda that is a conflict or a concern? None noted. Then for a meeting of the previous minutes, the minutes circulated from our July 4th meeting. Any errors, omissions? Being none, then can I have a mover and a seconder? Councilor Gill and Tina. Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Presentations, delegations, which we have none. Opening comments. We are going to discuss a little bit more further in the agenda about searching for more new board members. There will be there was also an option of looking at radio advertising, because it seems like Huron County is more of a radio people. I'm not that sure if that's everybody sitting in their combines and tractors, but certainly there's some options there that we just wanted to mention. Also, I noticed the Rural Talks to Rural in October 16th, 18th in Blythe is coming up, which I think is exciting. I hope it goes well.
We'll be featured in our farm succession planning project. Will be one of the best practices that's featured at the conference. Yeah.
All right, board member comments.
A couple things that's going on in Bayfield, if you want to know what's going on in the south end of the county. You've probably seen this because it affects Goderich as well, but the wastewater expansion grant was announced. So our councillor Bill Whetstone, who bless his soul, pays $80 out of his own pocket to rent space once a quarter and get figuratively punched in the face by all of his constituents and answer all the questions. So it's going to net out about 540 additional houses just in Bayfield, just south of town, likely not for another couple of years. And 50 of those houses are infill, so they're already properties existing in Bayfield with the sewage hookup, just not hooked up. You may be aware that in Bayfield we have a full sewage lagoon, which has kind of put a moratorium on building. No matter what the province says, we haven't been able to go forward. So now they will be able to go forward. And as you can imagine, it's a little bit of a bone of contention between longtime residents and people that want growth. So I think that's interesting. We had an arts festival 2 Sundays ago this weekend with funding from federal ECDEV and I think support from our own ECDEV crew, correct, Vicki?
Cultural services.
Cultural
Services. Project by the active team did support cultural services.
Thank you. And Gordon Glenn McNeil was there and gave some opening comments, but I haven't heard I've seen anything official yet. I think the artists were a little disappointed in I think engagement from the folks, but that I think had a lot to do with where they were placed as well. And it's the first time that they've had it, but the turnout seemed to be excellent. So I would expect to see that happen again next year. And despite our best efforts to fund the Oktoberfest event in Bayfield, they are canceling it due to low ticketing. That's my Bayfield report.
Good. Thanks, Tina.
If I could just follow up, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair, to what Tina had said. That event was well attended in
I thought so
Bayfield.
too.
It was fun. And you know, those in attendance were able to frequent, you know, it was a nice warm day as far as refreshments were concerned. And I think it was really good for the village, and everyone seemed to really enjoy it. And on an additional note, recently, Clean Energy Frontier held a conference that many were in attendance. Our chair, Vicky, CAO, and myself, and Trevor Besnet was there from the town of Goderich. And it really warms my heart that people will come up to me from outside of Huron County and expound on what we are doing within Huron County as far as economic development. And we're the envy of a lot of counties. And I want to share that because I think it's very important not to keep a light under a bushel basket. And we're doing great things, and it's recognized both within the county and outside of the county. So Chris was also in attendance. Great that you were there. And I wanted to share that, how Huron County is perceived. Thank you.
Board comments? Right, correspondence, I assume we have none. So 9.1 is the economic development report update, July 2024. Everybody have a look at it. Any questions? Well, then we will go with our recommended motion that the chair and members of the Economic Development Board receives the report by Vicky Lass, Economic Development Director, dated October 3rd, 2024. Titled Economic Development Department July 2024 Update as presented for information. Have a mover and a seconder for that. Tina?
On fire today.
Derek raised his hand.
Sorry.
Derek.
Oh, sorry. Any more discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So, 2, Clean Energy Working Group, we're gonna have Chris Watson. Who's a bit of a.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Warden, for bringing up the Clean Energy Frontier Conference that we were that Director Lass, myself, and the elected officials you mentioned had the opportunity to attend Monday, Tuesday of this week. This report, I think, is sort of a direct result of our membership in the Clean Energy Frontier of the Nuclear Innovation Institute. The Clean Energy Working Group was struck as with the intention of leveraging opportunities from that group. So knowing that, Bruce Power, the Nuclear Innovation Institute, the Clean Energy Frontier are all looking to sort of grow the industry in this region, it then begs the question of what can we be doing as a county, as a department, to sort of maximize and leverage that opportunity. The initial meeting, myself, Director Lass, as well as Derry Wallace, climate change specialist, and Councillor Ginn, Councillor Heffer, as well as Board Chair Vincent were in attendance to sort of kick off this initial working group meeting. During that meeting, the group went through an environmental scan, so took essentially stock of what's happening right now with respect to clean energy in the county. Went through a SWOT analysis, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in terms of what's out there for us, what we could potentially leverage, as well as a PESL analysis. So that's looking at the political, environmental, social, technology, say technological, legal and economic considerations when we think about clean energy. And then finally, we looked at a gap analysis between what we have now and where we feel the opportunities are, and in terms of where the board of the working group could potentially have a role in furthering clean energy objectives in the county. So with that, we essentially sort of took a first crack at some potential objectives and some potential ideas. Again, sort of high level, some of the ideas that we thought might be worth looking a little bit closer into. I think one of the top ideas on the list was sort of having a role of countering myths around clean energy and the impacts there, sort of to get ahead of NIMBYism. In particular, there was a specific experience that I think the chair shared with us around a battery storage opportunity that came in that just simply was not communicated well to the community and ended up getting a very negative reaction. Again, the thought there was that if we were able to engage some champions, particularly from the agricultural sector, and get ahead of the messaging on this, that there might be an opportunity there to sort of make the road to clean energy development a little bit smoother. With that in mind, we'd also looked at things like, potentially running some type of event, vendor show that informed and educated both the business population as well as residents and agriculture. Looked at facilitating conversations at the community level, really trying to get everybody involved in understanding the benefits so that when those opportunities arise, we're not caught off guard, we're not behind the eight ball in terms of misinformation that can easily make its way out there. We'd also looked at opportunities to make it as easy as possible for investors that want to come in and bring the technology to the area. So as simple as we can make that experience from start to finish, from idea to shovels in the ground, I think then makes us a much more desirable area to develop this type of opportunity. We'd also talked about potentially looking at getting groups of farmers or essentially building owners to get rooftops together and potentially look at creating some type of cooperative so that we could come forward with some of the opportunities that we're seeing from the province in terms of their plans to purchase renewable energy in the coming months. Again, I'll hold off from going through all of the specific list, but essentially we ended up with a long list of potentials that I think we all agreed was going to need to be narrowed and focused, as well as looking at developing a clean energy strategy for both the board and the county, that we could then look at what means would be required in order to execute that strategy, whether it's staff time, funding, or have you, in order to really maximize the potential impact that we can have in this. I know that certainly reflecting on the experience at the Clean Energy Conference, I think Director Lass and I had a chance to spend quite a bit of time reflecting on our experience at that event. I think do feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm misspeaking at all here, but we agree that there are significant opportunities, but that we really need to be strategic in terms of how we approach them. We really felt that some conversations with our partners at NII and Bruce Power in order to get a solid sense of where they feel where they're heading, number one, and where they feel we can have an impact and where they feel our opportunity can be most maximized. Sort of having that type of honest conversation that then we can take back and make sure that we're being very strategic in terms of how we execute on any type of opportunities that arise, so that we're not, duplicating or attempting to attract an industry that our partners may feel doesn't quite fit in with their strategy. So again, to sort of reiterate, I think we're sort of both the Clean Energy Working Group and internally as a department feel that there are some significant opportunities here, but we should be very strategic in terms of how we evaluate those opportunities and decide on how we're going to execute and eventually be successful in terms of developing this industry. I'm going to stop there. I feel like I've talked for a long time, but I'll let everybody, any questions or comments there.
Well, I'll maybe just add to that on the cooperatives, because I'm involved in a solar cooperative, which is predominantly, I would say, farmers from the Chatham area. But the solar farm is actually in Napanee. And I question, we're always struggling to get things going, being accepted by the public. And I question if a cooperative would be easier to sell to the public, because some of the public is those cooperative members. I mean, I've never started a cooperative. There's, I'm sure, all kinds of challenges, but I mean, if anybody could do it, it would be done in Huron County, right? So that's just, I want to give you the background on that. Any other comments on Chris or questions? Yeah, Jason.
Well, if I could make a suggestion, a lot of times these projects are really difficult to get up off the ground. And I think if you're forward thinking, try to get all your planning and ducks in line ahead of time, especially if you know neighboring communities that have had these struggles, and that kind of mirror what they're doing. And, you know, rather than come here and have egg on your face, you attract the investment, everything else, they get here and then there's misinterpretations and misunderstandings from neighbors and whatnot. That's how these things, you know, get stymied out, or you could miss the mark by not having that in place.
Point.
I'd just like to ask what impact or leverage does this working group want to have on policy, or what does a goal look like for you?
Well, I can jump in here. I don't know, Director Lass, if you want to.
I think at this point in the working group, we were doing that initial laying the foundation, and the list you see is of projects. And I think that one of the next steps for the working group is to back up a little bit and say, what is our piece of the clean energy game, opportunity, frontier, clean energy frontier? We're part of that with Gray and Bruce. But what's our piece and what does it look like? And what do we want to build on? What makes the most sense? And where can we have our largest impact for resources invested? So when we look at the nuclear impact and the building out of the supply chain, we had an impact of 2 businesses. One was a contract with one of our, with Ackermold. And it allowed them to open a new line of business, and it was very profitable for them. The other that is counted by Bruce Power is a warehouse space in the north end of the county. So I would say we have one business that came from the refurbishment supply chain build out. So, you know, what is our role for nuclear? Is there actually one? We don't know, but there are other clean energy opportunities. And so some of these projects look at them, but I think to answer your question is we need to move back up a little bit of a level and say, what's the overall plan? In good economic development, you want to build on what we have. What we have is agriculture. That's our strongest area. So what opportunities are there for clean energy development in agriculture? And are there other opportunities? You know, although we are well positioned for wind energy, we have a lot of unwilling hosts. So does that take that off the table? We have a lot of rooftops, as mentioned. So are we well positioned for solar energy? And I think we need to go back to that level and decide where we can have the greatest impact and then how we want to have that impact. And as Chris said, sit at that clean energy frontier table and say, we have suggested a number of ways we can partner. We still feel there's further conversation, but we would like to now turn it to how do you see us partnering with you, and just have an open and frank conversation, because that would be part of us determining how we play with those clean energy partners, what our role is and how we define our strategy. So I think that's, yes, on the next steps is what you're
Yeah,
asking.
I would just add to I 100% would get what you're saying. It's just in my small circle, it's the infrastructure that seems to be holding any investment back. You know, there's millions of square feet of south facing rooftop across the county. And there are good grants and all of the, the financing makes sense. But and I don't know how as a county or as a working group have any effect on that policy, but it's the infrastructure that seems to be holding anything back. Because we still have to pay delivery on all that, right? So we can produce all the power we want, but it doesn't affect our delivery charge, and that's a direct reflection of the state of the grid, right? So I don't know if you were to force anything, that would be where I would think that there's that's the low hanging fruit.
Through you, Mr. Chair, couldn't agree more. I think one of the most exciting things for me at this conference was that the IESO was at the table. So for the first time.
You do that acronym.
Oh, yes, pardon me.
Thank you.
I don't even know if I know what it is.
Independent electricity.
Electrical
Like-
suppliers,
Terry, right? Oh, no.
organization.
I can tell you what they do, but I can't, they're essentially, but thank you for that. This is the organization that essentially manages the province's grid, minute by minute, hour by hour, ensuring that there's enough electricity so that, if they're the ones that decide it's time to turn the gas plants on, they're the ones that call up Bruce Power and say, let off steam, there's too much power. So to that point, they're the ones that are making sure that are sort of giving the blessing or the nays to bringing the generating capacity on the table. So this is the first time in, either in my previous stint at the county till now that we've actually had somebody from IESO at the table. At this conference, he was one of the first people I attached myself to the second we got there. But just to talk about like, what are the options? What does this look like? What do we need to be doing in order to make sure that if we bring the capacity on? So his response back was that I think the type of generating that we're envisioning is likely not going to be an option for this first RFP. They're looking to get larger operators online in this first stage. His number he gave me was 1 megawatt or more in order to be eligible. And I asked, could we see a co-op come together at this point? He's like, not just yet, but soon. It's definitely on the table. I think there's a lot of advantages when it comes to sort of distributing generation. It means that you don't need the level of transmission and delivery charge if you can, reliably bring a lot of that generating capacity in at the local level. So all of that to say, yeah, I think we need to be barking up that tree as well. We're looking to make those contacts and develop them so that make sure that our voice is heard when these opportunities come up. And just to build on that too, I think there's really, when we look at clean energy, I think there are, obviously have to validate this with both the ag community and the sector that's building the technology. But I see two opportunities for us as a county. One is on the individual farm and ag side in terms of increasing the amount of value and income that we can see at the farm level. So I see that coming from things like RNG, solar, if there's an opportunity for on-farm battery storage, something along those lines that doesn't take up productive land. So that in terms of sort of raising all of the individual farms and ag production facilities in the county, sort of trying to get them seeing more value. On the other side is the manufacturing research, the types of things that we may see more centered around our settlement areas and, in places, to use the BYC as an example, where we could see more along the lines of research, manufacturing, sort of pushing the limits of innovation. Yeah, absolutely. So as we're looking at things, it's like, okay, if we agree that those are the goals that we're looking at, getting more value at the farm level, attracting these types of industries, let's talk about that. If that's the finish line, this is where we are now. what's the path to get us there, right? And I think some of it is going to involve the higher policy level where we're talking about, you know, what barriers are there from a policy perspective. Some of it's going to be economics, that are trying to create the type of financing tools that can make this stuff happen and make farmers comfortable enough to actually get into this type of thing. And then, you know, getting educational institutions, manufacturers comfortable with the idea, getting to know who we are and what we can do for them. I started talking a lot again.
That's when you get.
Yeah, a couple of things. So what you touched on, Derek, the rooftop is huge opportunities there, right? So why, you know, take 100 acres out of productive farmland when we have all these rooftops available? And we did identify as, you know, a constraint, the constraints on the electrical grid, right? Yeah. If the province is, you know, or the country is going to electrify everything, every hydro line down every side road is going to have to be upgraded. That's a huge cost, you know. So that's a bit of a challenge. And the one thing I wanted to bring up, I had a talk with somebody from the Federation of Agriculture talking about just that, the opportunities for solar panels on barn rooftops. And the first thing that replied to me was, well, you got to be careful because they can catch fire and burn your barn down, and fire departments don't want to fight it. We've got to get away from that. I mean, Central Huron's had solar panels on the roofs of the arena and our Reach Center for 6 years now, right? Like, but we got to get ahead of that mindset that, you know, you don't want to do this because your barn might burn down. Like, I mean, that's that's a you know, a hill we got to, you know, we got to fight for. And those opportunities are out there, good sources of income, and yeah, but we've got to get those lines upgraded so that we can put it all together.
That's Jason.
If I could make a suggestion, we looked at putting a solar farm in Vanasser years ago, and then the legislation changed and that there just wasn't enough meat on the bone to go ahead with it. But the starting point I would suggest is see where your line capacity is to begin with in the region. Say, you know what, here's a strong point. We have opportunity here, because a lot of these places may have rooftops, but they may not have enough capacity to take the power away from that farm or that lot, for instance.
Well, that's the Seaforth problem.
Yeah.
County Road 12 North is crappy old lines, and a whole bunch of us tried to put solar panels up and couldn't, right? Cut trees, poured cement bases, the whole 9 yards, so infrastructure.
You live on Hydro Line Road and I can't get.
Yeah.
Any more comments here?
Mr. Chair, to follow up on what Past Warden Ginn said, is communication and collaboration with fire departments and that sort of thing, do we need to do a better job with that?
Oh, I think absolutely, you know,
Bring everyone along.
yeah, I think if we could bring fire departments on site and say, yes, we do now have ability to fight these fires. It's not the dire straits that it maybe once was, but you just keep getting these, you know, messages all the time, you know, electric cars exploding after the hurricane, right? Like, yeah, it may happen, and yeah, we have to learn how to deal with it, but you don't stop driving an electric car because a couple blew up, right? So
You're not suggesting that it's a human nature character to resist change.
not at all, no.
I didn't. So we have to address that.
Yep.
Education, collaboration, bring everyone along. Thank you.
Chair, which is why tell the clean energy story more fully is one of the top objectives of this working group. But again, giving a big vision of what story we're going to tell. Space.
Any other comments, All right, thanks, Chris. So we have a motion that says the Huron County Economic Development Board accepts a report by Chris Watson, Economic Development Officer, dated October 3rd, 2024, titled Clean Energy Working Group for Information. Have a mover, Jamie, and a seconder, Derek. Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Good, so moving on to 3, striking the Economic Development Board Renewal Committee. Turn that over to our director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you and to the board. We have vacancies on our board, 3 in particular. We also have 1 term ending at the end of this year, and that's you, Jason. Your term comes up at the end of December. According to our terms of reference, terms are 3 years in length, and if a member wishes to continue on the board, they can apply for an additional 3-year term. So at this point, we have 3 and possibly 4 vacancies. We haven't had a chance to talk, my apologies, that we'll be looking to fill. So we request of the board that we can strike the renewal committee, so that we have begun advertising, but the renewal committee will take a look at the individuals who apply. They will compare them to the matrix in our terms of reference, and then return to the board with suggestions of individuals who should fill those positions. So we are seeking the board's approval to strike that renewal committee and move forward with recruitment for our 2025 first meeting.
Any questions, discussion?
Small comment.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I thought the renewal ad that is on Facebook was well written, and I really liked how it had specific skill sets that the department is looking for. I thought that was helpful.
Thank you. And that those were pulled from our terms of reference and prior.
Okay, then, so if there's no more comments, the motion is the Huron County Economic Development Board appoint the chair, warden, CEO work, director of economic development to the renewal committee as of October 3rd, 2024. And further that the renewal committee be struck to fill 4 vacancies for the 2025-2028 Economic Development Board. I'm a mover for that, moved by Pastor McGinn, seconded by Tina. Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Very good, thank you. So 4 is strategic priority setting for 2025. Oh, did we want to talk more about that radio advertising?
We could move that to budget if you wish, or we could talk about that in relationship to the rural renewal committee.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so in relationship to the renewal committee and the renewal committee and looking for future board members, we thought it was a good idea to just make sure we're clear on the priorities of the board, but also take an opportunity to look at what you've accomplished, celebrate what you've accomplished, take a look at the county council's priorities and also the main priorities of the strategic plan of the department, which was Thrive 2022 to 2025. So we will be working on a new strategic plan for the department starting next year. And we hope to do a more fulsome strategic planning session with the board once the new members are on. What we hope to do today in this exercise is, as I said, take a look at successes. And the conversation around priorities is more about when we're looking to recruit, what skills, abilities, perspectives would we like to look for in our future board members to complement those who are still on the board, and to make sure that we have the knowledge, skills, abilities, and networks to actually execute on some of the top priorities related to the department, the board's work, and the council priorities. So in that vein, as a means of an environmental scan and a celebration, I wanted to just look at some of the accomplishments of this board as it sits right now. I'm so sorry, Lynn, I have my back to you. I'm not sure how to do this, that you can see it. I'll read it off to you. So some of the accomplishments I've listed, and I do ask you please to also add to the list, is the movement of SLED program and the evolution of the SLED program. So the SLED program was at one point delivered completely by the discretion of the department through the director. You have helped to form a panel of judges who evaluate the SLED program and who help to distribute the money. You have moved from 10 to 11 we partnered with Community Futures for an additional SLED grant. But at one time it was a $10,000 grant, period. And you have moved to distribute for the highest needs. So we have been able to give out more than 10 or 11, my apologies, 11 grants in a fiscal year, making the money stretch further across the county. So you've made some significant changes through your decision-making with the SLED program. We now have one of our board members sitting with the starter company, helping to judge the allocation of funds for that program and also to support and coach. So Tina is part of our starter company judging panel for the allocation of the grant dollars. But in addition to that, she brings a wealth of information and coaching suggestions, opportunities, and in some cases, taking our businesses beyond what we can offer in the department and helping them to seek funding that is beyond the realm of the grant program. So we've seen some really great contributions and successes with the board's involvement in some of our keystone projects that we deliver. We have struck 3 working groups over the course of the last year. The housing working group resulted in an examination of public-private partnership, what that looked like, what do social bonds look like, what's our role, and decided to take a pause on the public-private partnership at this point, but move forward with an educational piece, videos, so that we can communicate out to the public around what does density done well look like? What's happening in Huron County? And dispelling NIMBYism around who are those people who live in my backyard in a more dense housing form. So those videos have been extremely well received. We have struck the Clean Energy Group. You heard a report this morning. And although we weren't able to strike the succession planning group on the proposed date of September 12th, we have had our initial meeting. It was just a little bit more delayed, and you will get a report in the November board package on that working group meeting. And we had a very fulsome discussion, and we're really fortunate to have both the buyer and seller perspective sitting in that working group, and also agriculture and non-agricultural businesses in our community are represented in that buyer and seller opportunity and how to look at opportunities for us to move forward on. So we have struck and are doing good work in 3 working groups at this time. We have also had participation in the Thrive Summit on the succession panel, and also contributing to our stage setup and variety. We have had board members participate in our Next Generation podcast. Our podcast series for succession planning on the farm has been well received. We have had over 450 hits on the 6 podcasts that are distributed right now and available through most podcast channels. So you can get it on Spotify, Apple Music, you can get it through our website. And we have consistent attendance at the Clean Energy Frontier Summit over the last 2 years and conference just this week. So this is a really impressive list of work that you've done so far. And I just wanted to ask, when we look at that and celebrate this, is there anything that I have missed that you've participated in and I have missed?
I think Mark's work in immigration and the welcoming put on, I think is impressive.
Mr. Chair, if I could just reinforce what Past Warden Ginn said on that. Mark and his colleagues have done a wonderful job of welcoming new Canadians into Huron County and to be part of the fabric and their welcome here. And that is so important, to have that culture of welcome. Everyone belongs.
think the other key role that board members have played for us, and we appreciate, is that you help to get the message out as to what economic development is, what we do, when events are happening, and are supporters of the department. So we do appreciate that. So what I wanted to do next was remind us of the county priorities that that were established at the near the beginning of this council's term, and how they relate to our department. So you'll see the priorities posted over there behind you. They're also posted at the they're not at the coffee station anymore, but they are posted in a large form in the back part of our office because we refer to them on a regular basis. So there are a number of priorities. They are not all priorities assigned to economic development or involving economic development. So I condensed the list for you to take a look at today. Show it to Lynn a little bit. Sorry, Lynn. But on the list of council priorities, where it touches the work of the Economic Development Department and the board, is we see a council priority as housing, alternate energy solutions, welcoming and inclusive communities, workforce attraction, economic readiness, youth engagement, and agriculture. So these are all priorities set by this term's county council. And they touch on all of our work in the department. So when we look back at what you've accomplished, we can see where your work has touched on SLED being part of, I'm going to give you a different color. Well, let's start with housing. The housing working group and the housing videos have added to the housing conversation and telling the story of Huron County housing. The alternate energy, the clean energy working group has contributed to that alternate, oh, thank you. Alternate energies. As mentioned, the work with our local immigration partnership, which is part of the succession planning conversation. So when you get the report around succession planning, as we're seeing businesses age out and wanting to sell, there is an opportunity to advertise some of those businesses to some of our newcomer families. And so there is a link between Mark's work and newcomers starting entrepreneurial businesses or purchasing entrepreneurial businesses, but also our welcoming and inclusive communities priority is addressed as well through some of the work in the, pardon me, lost it for a minute. Our welcoming and inclusive communities is addressed in some of our SLED work where we're doing a lot of community economic development. And so those priorities are established not on the entire spectrum of economic development priorities. Those projects are awarded accordingly. So you have been able to touch on the welcoming and inclusive communities. We are working in the department on workforce attraction. That hasn't necessarily been a board priority, but it is a council priority. Economic readiness, all that we do at the board level is around becoming economic readiness, looking at what's our role in clean energy, looking at how do we advance different sectors, how do we address aging out in the farm community or aging out of our, as we have an aging workforce, we have aging entrepreneurs, and we know that Huron County is really quite entrepreneurial. So that's all part of economic readiness. Youth engagement. So as a department, we look at youth engagement primarily from the lens of our summer company program and youth entrepreneurs participating and supporting the development of young entrepreneurs in Huron County. You will see this afternoon or later in the agenda that one of the projects is centered on youth. And the SLED program this year in particular, there was a youth leadership program. So we do see some youth activity through some of the board's priorities right now. And of course, agriculture, that was part of our housing project. That's part of our clean energy project. That's part of our succession planning working group. And so you can see that the board is engaged in the priorities of council. So one of the questions will be, are there priorities listed here that you want to grow, that you want to dig a little bit deeper on in our upcoming year? And just quickly to touch base, the priorities in the Thrive strategic plan for our department were to collaborate with our partners, sustain and grow our thriving business community, include everyone in our healthy rural economy, and communicate effectively internally and externally. And again, you can see the parallel of the connections to the work he's done as a board. So in SLED, we see we see inclusion, that we're including everyone in the opportunity to participate in the SLED grants. We're growing our thriving business community and collaborating with partners. So sustaining and collaborating through our SLED work. And you can see how these relate moving on through. So I don't want to belabor that. What I'd like to do is move to a conversation now to say, when we look at the priorities of county council and we understand the work of both the board and the department, considering looking for potentially 4 new board members, are there skills, resources, abilities, individuals that you feel would be valuable to have at the table that we should look to target as we're recruiting for the board? Are there any questions to this point? And then we ask that question.
Central Huron, we do a lot of work with the schools as far as youth engagement. Just last week, we had art students out painting things on sidewalks and roadways and the likes of that. If we look at someone from a school board perspective, as a member, I've always liked youth engagement because, you know, I still think that's one of the biggest challenges Huron County has, that we lose too many of our youth and we don't bring them back. And I just wonder whether we should get someone from the school system.
So someone from the school board, if we're thinking on that youth topic, on that youth priority of council, where else what other skill base could we look at to have a youth type voice, or the youth voice represented at the table? Like that. Yeah, Jason.
Maybe get somebody that is young, a student, or, you know, well, just me.
Linda, do you have something?
Yeah, I think just building on that, I think maybe there is a young person who has, benefited from a SLED grant or one of the other youth programs for, entrepreneurs. Maybe we can actually, approach young business owners that may have participated in some of the programs that the Economic Development Department has provided. That's the youth issue. The other thing I wanted to mention was not bashing agriculture at all. I mean, it's the biggest thing in Huron County, but is there a business person that isn't directly involved in agriculture that may want to provide a different perspective with respect to economic development? Just a thought. I think agriculture is well represented, I guess, as that's the other issue. That's the other just thing I wanted to note. So can we go into businesses that are not directly involved with agriculture that may have a different perspective?
Good point.
So in the past, we've had representatives from retail, from tourism, and tourism, hospitality, manufacturing, to add to Linda's point. Thank you, Linda. Jason.
Yeah, Jason.
Maybe property development or construction. There's a housing shortage. Maybe it'd be good if those kind of people represented. They'd have the connections, networks, knowledge.
Great, thanks, Jason.
The other one that I wonder about, we have a huge influx of people that come to Huron County in the summertime, either through like, Central Huron has 11 campgrounds. Probably represents a quarter of our population, you know, and not to mention the cottages along the lakes. And I don't know if there's a fit there or not. You know, there's cottage associations and the likes of that. I don't know. I just think that's a big chunk of the population, albeit a, you know, part-time of the year, but if there's something there.
And would you see it connecting to, I'll happily write it down.
I would say probably under workforce attraction, right? Like if these people are coming half the year, why don't we bring them here? The whole year?
Of housing.
Certainly an economic readiness argument to be made there in terms of getting them on board for, there's certainly a very vocal population as well, getting them on board with.
And we do see those who come to live seasonally or visit is a gateway to residency. So
I've heard it many times from my sister used to own a campground and just some of the people there gotta love to move here, you know. That's like, why don't you? You know, the jobs seem to be here. Housing certainly is part of it, but
so is there, when we think of the mission of the board and some of the criteria for the board to have that business experience and business lens and business operation, is there a business or sector that would represent this population as opposed to members of this population? That we could think about. And I'm not disagreeing, I'm just trying to tie it back to the purpose of the board is that business leadership and guidance. And yes, we want to tap into this seasonal population to look at, you know, if they have a 3-season home, can they make it 4-season and suddenly housing is not an issue, but they can contribute to the workforce. Is there a business function or a part of a sector that could represent the concerns of this population, but still be grounded in economic development, not just residency?
There's actually property companies that rent cottages out. Maybe a person that has the local knowledge and the network of people coming in would be a good conduit to see what people look for from outside in. And they could probably get you an inventory of houses and everything else to build on that.
You run a business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Dave?
I'm wondering, Mark, if you had anybody in your network of new to the area or new Canadians that have some, you know, they're in the realm of business development or economic development.
The challenge that we often face with new people who are moving here is they're so busy trying to build their life and establish their life here that it's hard to engage them until they've been here for about 5 years.
Mhm.
So we could look at people who've been here a little longer, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tina.
Mr. Chair, at our succession working group meeting last week, was it you that raised the example or was it the warden about the,
Shell?
yes,
That's just what I was gonna say.
he'd be great. I mean, he's a business person. He's a newcomer. He's a business person. He's helping fund other businesses. What about him or someone like him, if there is someone like him?
Totally, he is, Mr. Chair, he has reached out to me on numerous occasions asking for involvement. How can I get involved in Huron County? How can I help? And he brings a different perspective, which is welcome.
We're pretty white, guys
Yeah,
and gals.
And my apologies, his name again. If
I don't know. I don't think
Okay.
I don't think we know his name.
it's a Shell gas
Oh.
station right on 21.
He's probably giving me business cards.
Yeah,
21 and which one, Brian? Sorry.
21 North.
yeah, just right around the corner.
Yes.
Here, okay,
North.
all right, in Goderich.
And he's always there working, or almost always.
Well, he has been, however, he hasn't been there in a couple of months because he's working on other business ventures. So he has other persons involved in that
Great.
principles of business now.
So he's creating jobs.
Oh, absolutely.
we have, when we think about recruitment, we have had some of our biggest successes by people being tapped on the shoulder. And that's also why we wanted to walk through this exercise with you today, because as we look at this, and I'm happy to add more, but as we look at this list, who do you know that would fall within this realm?
Can I just suggest that we keep this at a little bit of high level and not specific things, because this is a recording that's going on YouTube channel.
So when you look at your networks and think about, you know, the work of the board well, who do we know that or channels that we want to go through to reach individuals who would be in this realm? And I don't need an answer. What I need to tell you is that we have circulated that job description to you, the board advertisement to you. And we do suggest that if you know of someone that you think would be a good addition to the board, especially based on what we're looking at and for, that you circulate that and make sure that you explain there is a process. So just because they've been tapped on the shoulder doesn't mean they will become a board member, but we highly encourage them to submit a resume for consideration, and that the process, the renewal committee will go through its process accordingly, according to our terms of reference. But we would highly encourage you to think about members of your community. When it comes to a youth that's benefited from our programming, we're more than happy to share the names of those individuals that had, or reach out to them ourselves if the board wants us to reach out to some of our graduates who could represent that young entrepreneur perspective. Are there any other skills, abilities, networks that you see would be advantageous to the board and its work?
Maybe someone who's doing not large private equity investing, but maybe medium-sized VC venture capital, so VC investing, that's bringing money into the county and creating jobs, supporting businesses. So I'm just trying to think of, how economic development is measured in general, and I would imagine it's number of businesses, number of jobs, investment in the region. So that's kind of pinpointed in those roles.
Representing medium-sized equity investment. Jason?
Was somebody from Bruce Power or somebody from the nuclear industry. We want to tap into the green energy.
Anything else? Anyone else? Any other skill sets? Okay. So traditionally we advertise through newspaper. That's becoming more difficult in Huron County, and you need a much longer runway to get into newspapers. So we are putting the ad in the Goderich paper. We can get in the North Huron paper. We are distributing through social media. We are distributing through our networks of not-for-profit organizations, the BIA, the Chamber. We hold a roundtable monthly, and so it has been announced through that organization and circulated. We have sent it out to our municipal offices, asking them to post it on their bulletin boards and through our library system for that same sort of distribution to the general public. The only thing that would be non-traditional for us would be radio ads. We would be able to obtain a spot, 20 ads over the course of a week for $700 on one radio station. we have the option of 3 radio stations that we could advertise on. Again, we have found that our most successful way of recruitment is person to person, but we wanted to bring that to the board for discussion. And we can talk about a decision on that when we talk about budget, if you like. So I just wanted to put that out there that radio was suggested. But historically, we have found that tapping someone on the shoulder has been our most successful means of recruitment. And I wanted to let you know the other ways we have been recruiting and circulating that information. Okay.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair? Do you have any data on circulation of different paper media outlets? And I'm thinking the Goderich Signal Star in relation to the Citizen, this sort of.
Well, we do.
If you can give me a few minutes, I can come back to you with.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Mark has some really good stats on how Huron County consumes its information and also the reach and circulation of our papers. Now, with the change in newspaper ownership, as I said, it's getting harder and harder. You need a lot more lead time to get into the papers. But
Thank you.
It's probably worth noting too that I'm just looking at the ad on Instagram. The deadline is October 11th.
yes,
Just pretty tight.
Yeah.
Okay.
which is why we started to advertise before we came to the.
Mhm.
So if something like radio ads was to happen, it would be happening immediately.
Okay.
Okay, the Focus has a weekly circulation of 18,250. The Independent Plus, which covers not only Huron County, but also Southern Bruce and Northern Perth, has 14,000. Exeter's newspaper has 8,100. The Signal Star has 2,000. The North Huron Citizen has 2,000. Wing of Advanced Times has 1,200. Clinton News Record 375. Seaforth Expositor 300. I don't have the Goderich Sun.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, how many applications do you guess that we would need to get to net 3 good members for the board? Ballpark. Like 25 per successful,
For 4,
say for 3.
for 3,
Or,
Okay,
or good.
yeah, usually it's a
One
third,
third,
a third, a third, yeah, yeah.
so
So I would be thrilled with 15.
Mhm.
5, 15
Yeah.
applicants?
That'd be tops.
Oh, okay.
Now, they would, that would, my preference is having shoulders.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody in the funnel now? Any apps?
I haven't taken a look.
Okay.
Yes, there are applications that have come into Susan's office so far.
Okay, that's good.
I haven't dug into them, but when I asked yesterday, she said she has received applications, so
Okay.
they have started to come in. The only other thing I wanted to offer here for consideration is, is there regional representation that has to be considered? I don't know. I just know that has been a conversation and I wanted to put it there to think about, if all of our membership comes through our networks, do we limit our regional representation? And should that, I don't believe that should be the first criteria. But I think it should be something that we are mindful of as we recruit. Although regional representation is not part of our matrix when we evaluate individuals.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I'm not the biggest person on boundaries. So I think we want the best people first, irregardless of where they live. And if they happen to live side by side, we want the best people.
For discussion? Do you, Vicky?
Yes.
So we have a motion, the hearing final economic development board, appoint the chair, warden. Or do that?
I think you did that.
Oh no, strategic priorities. The Economic Development Board received a report by Vicky Loss, Director of Economic Development, dated 3rd, 2024, titled Strategic Priority Setting for 2025 as presented for information. I'm moving the seconder for that. There. Anybody want to second that? Jason? Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So 9.5 is the Economic Development Department update for August 2024. It was circulated. I will say there was a ton of information in that one. Holy smokes.
We were busy.
Yeah. In the summer, no less. But it was good reading and a lot of events listed and coming up. So
If I may,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, just one comment that I wanted to make is that, part of what we've been doing over the last year or so, and will continue to do, is putting really strong foundations in place and trying to shock proof the department so that if we pull out a person, we don't lose all knowledge. And some of those pieces still sat in staff's head. And so Summer Company, I think, is a really great example where our coaches ran the program. And this year, our coach, Trisha Denemy, put curriculum around the whole program, created handouts, slides, a communication process, and documented all of it. And that's where we're heading with all of our programs. So again, that we have that shock proof perspective, and also those foundational pieces put in place that no matter who is here, the department will run well. The feedback we got this year on our Summer Company program from the parents, because they participate quite fully, especially at our last session, was really rewarding because it confirmed that this was a good move. The way that Trisha designed the curriculum pieces was well received. The benefit, she has children of a similar age, and so she knew very well how to talk to them. And we got so much feedback about this was the first learning opportunity that some of those participants had where they loved learning. And when you can move a young person to loving learning and loving entrepreneurship, and they get that first experience here in our county, in their hometowns, these are the types of experiences that make youth consider moving back to their hometown after that sort of rite of passage period, whether it be off to post-secondary or travel, whatever. But after that sort of moving into adulting experience, it's that kind of engagement where they have been inspired and engaged and listened to and developed a love of learning and indirectly their community that brings them back. So I just feel really excited about the way the staff has embraced the vision of putting foundational pieces in place, but also improving our engagement and the way we communicate with our clients. So I just wanted to note that for the board.
I can reinforce that with the parents and the students. I mean, the parents were absolutely thrilled with how engaged the students were and how they came out of their shell and just had a lot more confidence. They said it was, and if they saw it,
yeah,
my gosh, it was a real transformation. So yeah, very positive.
They were very proud, weren't they, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Extremely.
And very engaged. The young lady who raised chickens on chicken delivery day, it was her mother doing the delivery. We were teasing her, asking her what her rate of pay was for the deliveries. But all the parents were highly engaged and really pleased. So it's great.
Mhm.
In-kind love.
Anything more on that then? So, so the motion, the chair and members of the Economic Development Board receives a report by Vicky Loss, Economic Development Director dated October 3rd, 2024, titled Economic Development Department Update, August 2024, as presented for information. Have a mover, moved by again, seconded by somebody. Derek? Any more discussion on the motion then? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So moving on to 9.6, Economic Development Board Budget Expenditure Options, presented by our director.
So each year you have a budget to spend that's discretionary based on your projects. The last 2 years that has been a $30,000 budget. Last year you spent it on the creation of the videos. This year, the only amount that you have really spent out of that budget to date has been for the film industry advocacy piece. Although we did assign dollars for the Oktoberfest, since it is not running, those dollars are now back for allocation. So at the July meeting, we spoke about that budget and what you wanted to do moving forward. And what we requested of staff was to bring forward requests for funding that did not fall within their original or assigned budget, but have been brought forward as opportunities for us to move forward. And so in this report, staff have outlined projects that they see advantage to being funded through the board expenditures that also align with the board priorities, council priorities, and the priorities of the department. So in front of you, you have a number of projects that are outlined. Those that put those project submissions forward from the department are here to discuss or answer any questions, or if you'd like a brief overview verbally, they're available to do that. And then the projects total, in total, they're 22,500. We'll be asking the board to consider what projects they would like to fund. A combination of all or none. So the remainder of the budget that you have available to you is approximately 27,600. And due to an error that I made, that is actually includes the Oktoberfest amount. I forgot to take it out. One would almost think I was clever, but it wasn't. It was an error. So the full budget that you have available to you, now that the 5,000 won't be spent on Oktoberfest, is 27,600, to be clear. Would you like a verbal presentation? I think it consolidates it nicely if the staff present on their projects.
No.
Okay. So our first project in the list is the English language classes for newcomers to Canada, and Mark submitted for this.
Great. Immigration Partnership is funded mostly by Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada. We are able to spend on many things, but there are certain things that include direct service delivery that are not included within our funding. One of the challenges recently over the last 2 years is that the province has said we're only willing to fund virtual English language classes in Huron County. And we support that and the Centre for Employment, who is funded by the province to deliver those. However, they are regulated to only provide that to certain types of people who come to Canada. Not all people who come to Canada are able to access those English language classes. And particularly people who are here on temporary residency visas are not able to access those. The funding that the Centre for Employment is provided does not cover that group of people. What we would like to do is we believe that if people have access to learning English, their productivity at work will increase, but also it helps them on their pathway, because the best way to increase the chances of long-term residency and retention in our community is to start by the people who are already here. But to become a permanent resident of Canada as a temporary resident, you have to pass an English language class. And so you have to have English language equivalent of 4, which would be about a grade 6 or grade 7 English language capabilities and listening, reading, writing. For many of the employers, the employees who are coming have limited English. So there are some developments already in the community of people who are hiring tutors for their workers, but we'd like to get this a little bit more established. So and to prove that this is a worthy investment for employers. So we'd like to run English language training provided by Set 7, which is out of North Perth, who've already been delivering English language classes to temporary workers in Minto. We'd like to try doing that over the winter this year. And we'd like to partner it with an evaluation, pre and post evaluation that would show productivity, the impact of 2 levels, introductory, and then for people who have some English skills, workplace language. So it would meet about 40 temporary residents would qualify for this. And we'd work with employers in the south of Huron County who employ a number of temporary residents to implement this.
Good. Sounds good.
My only comment would be,
Yeah.
I don't know how we got along without this.
Yeah.
Really. And Saturday is a good day, obviously, to run it for everybody. Okay, great. I think it's table stakes.
The next project that is up for consideration is transportation assistance for newcomers. Again, Mark.
Yeah, when the Ukrainians started arriving in Huron County back in 2022, the immigration partnership was hold volunteers together, and those volunteers were doing things like English language classes, offering housing to newcomers, providing transportation. Late last year, a group of those volunteers, we helped them formulate their own organization. It's called the Huron Newcomer Support Association, so that they could take a more direct role in providing assistance and have a bit more autonomy around decision making. In the past, IRCC has provided gas cards for volunteer drivers. This year, they told us they would not fund those gas cards for volunteer drivers. And so we are looking towards you to provide the volunteers with the Newcomer Support Association with gas cards so that they can help move people who are new to the country around the area. They primarily are taking people either for work-related to get to work or for medical appointments. Those are the biggest thing they're covering. From January to August, the 21 volunteers with this group have covered 11,000 kilometers. They haven't been paid for any of that. They just like a little bit of money back for the gas they've spent.
Sorry, I just feel like I'm holding us up, but just my question about this one is it enough? Is $2,500 enough? And just to go back to the last piece, the ESL, you said 20 students and it's $75 a person, so that's 1,500, and we've got $10,000 allocated. So I'm just,
I think it was 40.
or did I mishear you?
40.
Yeah, 20 per class.
So that's $3,000, but we've got 10 requested. So I'm wondering if you could just touch on where the extra, or am I just not doing math right? It's $75 per class per student, right? On the website? On the Set 7 website?
I did not look at their website, so I can't be sure. I did talk to the program coordinator. She mentioned because that it would be a new program and the travel, that's about the cost it would be. So.
Because I calculate that as 3,000 plus our time and of course developing the diagnostics. I'm sure there's money spent there, but that's a $7,000 delta. And then again, just to go back to the original was, are we scratching the surface with $2,500 if it's 11,000 kilometers? I don't know, is it enough?
That's what the group has asked for.
Okay, Thank you.
With the set 7, we can reach out to them and ask for a more thorough breakdown of how that would look.
Okay, thank you. We should.
So HERCO included likely traveling here and location, whatever, that's some of that stuff, right?
Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd be remiss to not comment. I think this is great. If this is what they request, I think that's what we should do.
The gas cards.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The next request is understanding newcomer to Canada housing experiences in Huron and Perth with a funding request of 1,750.
This is my last request. So we do receive funding to do research with newcomers. We have a $16,000 research project currently underway, and we've just received approval from an ethics board out of Waterloo that the research is ethically sound. The research this year will be looking at newcomer experiences of housing in Huron and Perth. We will be doing focus groups with newcomers to the community. Newcomers are people considered who have been here 10 or 5 years or less and moved to Canada. This research aims to identify what are the unique challenges that newcomers experiencing and accessing housing in our community, and then identify for us afterwards, where are the places where we can actually take action. We're not able to build new houses, but there may be areas where we can address information gaps or ensure that people have enough knowledge about the housing market in our community so that they make it that it makes it a little bit easier for them to access housing. So the research bit of this is that we are not given funding to provide honorariums for people's time. And so we're asking for a $50 grocery store voucher to give to any participant in Huron County who would take part in this research, this focus group.
And Mark, the study says Huron Perth.
Yep.
The vouchers would be for those who participate in Huron,
Yes.
but Perth does not have an immigration partnership. So we often, because of the close association between the two counties, we often include Perth in our research. But we have reached out to Perth County directly to ask them to provide honoraries for people who participate from Perth County. So this would be exclusively Huron County participants.
Any questions? Good. Sounds good.
Okay. Next is youth micro grants, a funding request of $5,000, and Rick Sickinger will give us an overview.
Okay, youth. And by youth, I'm specifically talking about teenagers. So the 13 to 19-year-old thing, which for someone like me who's been working in this kind of field for a while, that's the tough. There isn't a lot of programming in Huron County for that age group that isn't attached to an arena of some kind. So it's also an area I think that we talk a lot about, but we maybe could have a better track record in terms of actually delivering program. It's my personal contention that youth kind of know what will appeal to other youth, and they know what they want to do. So we need to do something, I feel, that's not too prescriptive, not too much like a church summer camp. And the two issues that I hear constantly from youth, and I did grill our summer students quite a bit this year about this as well, is it's just a little bit of money, right? Like it's usually just a few $100s they need to launch it. And the second part of that is always like a facility, because no one will rent to a 15 or 16-year-old. And with liability insurance that most of our municipal facilities ask for now, that's also a barrier. But we know there's willing hosts out there. We know that the Blythe Festival will provide space. We know that if they want to do film screenings, the museum will provide that space. So matching them with existing facilities is also part of the work. We have set, I think, a very good sort of template with SLED on how to deliver a funding program. So basically using a very similar model, a call for proposals and pushing it out to the schools. They really, our summer students really recommended pushing it out through the student councils and not through the administration, which I think is good. Smart. And then having a jury of a couple of ECDEP board members and a couple of maybe those student council reps from a couple of our secondary schools adjudicate and award the funding. As a pilot project, let's say that. So any questions about that?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. Were you listening to Past Warden Ginn's comments an hour ago?
No, I was not listening.
They kind of align.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. I haven't gone too much off script.
Yeah.
We'll see with all of the projects how they align back to council priorities and also sustain, include, communicate, and collaborate.
Let's just empower them to do something. It's that simple for me. Okay, next one.
No further questions. Terrific.
Go for it.
Agritourism. So we have received some federal funding, which will be announced on Friday. Yeah. Susan, we can do a bylaw.
Sure you'll see that by email today.
Yes, I will. So we are working with the Foodies group. We're working consultant on this. This is really like on the farm kind of agritourism that we are looking at. The Foodies group, he's done this work with Wellington County, Oxford County, and worked a lot with RTO1 doing similar type things and has created a Southwestern Ontario farm map. We held some information sessions. We pushed it out. We called for expressions of interest to different agritourism businesses. We got about 18 responses, and we spent a couple days with a consultant visiting all of these farms and seeing what they were about and learning more. From the 18, we've selected 16. We're working on a couple more. But the thing that became apparent when we met with them is that there was more work to do, as there always is, than we initially thought in the funding application. We had originally hoped to soft launch this agritourism product this Thanksgiving weekend. It's not going to happen. We met a lot of they're really good agritourism businesses, but they need signage. They have really good products, but they're displayed terribly, or the labeling isn't there. Like there's just so. Beyond the advice of the consultant, you know, the success of the trail will be like, keep it smaller, but make sure everybody on that trail is really good, right? So that the word of mouth builds fast. So we've decided to delay the launch till late spring of 2025 so that we can spend the winter doing some professional development with the selected sites, as well as a few of the sites that were like, you're not ready, so that we can get them more market ready and visitor ready. We're looking at a series of workshops on, you know, what's happening, culinary food trends, customer service, visitor expectations. But the one we really want to do that's outside of what we would normally do is merchandising. And Lavender Works in Brussels does it amazingly well. But there's quite a few that their farm stands, their farm shops could use, and their labeling could really use, even some booths at farmers markets could use some merchandising help. So our Huron Business Center has been thinking along the same lines and had some information about a group called the Retail Duo that provide these kind of workshops. They have a fee of $3,000 to develop a specialized workshop, which is kind of what we're asking them to do, because we want it focused on food and agritourism. the nice thing about this request, if we build the workshop this year with the $3,000, it also will apply to the Foodpreneur program that the Small Business Center is offering this year, because marketing and merchandising are not part of the Foodpreneur program. It's how to get your product into different places and develop your product, but not that specific piece of it. So we see that, and also then we have a workshop that's been developed that we can offer in subsequent years.
Very cool.
Questions?
So that's the overview of all the projects that we are, that the department is suggesting the board may consider for funding.
We'll proceed with our motion. It's okay.
Questions?
Yeah, any questions
I
before?
I don't want to mess up the motion. I've done that. I don't like it. So, then I know Susan doesn't like it.
I'm good at it.
So just before we do that, can we, like, I think we should get an answer to that $10,000, because unless they're driving 33,000 kilometers, I mean, you've got people asking for $2,500 for 11,000 kilometers worth of driving and then a $7,000 delta. I just don't understand why 10. I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm the one who said it's table stakes. That's what I used to do for a living. I'm a big fan, but I would just like to understand, and I think we should responsibly understand why 10 and not 3 or 5 or, yeah. So,
Or 3 times the amount of students.
Right, yeah.
The money maybe isn't the issue. It's if you're gonna, I 100% agree. with you.
yeah. So how do we,
So maybe one of the things that you can do is say up to in the amount of $10,000. Mark reaches out, he gets additional information, and then a report comes back to this board that outlines the specifics. Mark knows at this point what the feedback is of the board.
Okay.
And he's not going to spend over and above what the conversation is at. Right? So it isn't specifically 10, but it's up to 10 and that right? To 10 works for get more details. That's okay?
yeah, thank you.
So how would you then back to the motion?
We're just gonna add an and further that. Just trying to find what the name of that program is.
Those are motions to 22 or 27.
No.
Does that sound done?
The name.
That's
The name.
yes.
Is that 7?
Or English language classes for newcomers.
There
to
it
Canada.
is.
SET number 7.
So did that. Yeah, okay, up to 10,000 for English language classes. Yeah.
For newcomers to Canada.
Classes for
Newcomers
to Canada. Okay, and for the here, can first the allocation of terms. With, okay, so we're gonna add, and the further that. The Huron County Economic Development Board approved the allocation of, it's still 2225.
Yes. It's
2225. With the allocation of up to 10,000 for the English language, that one. For from the Economic Development Board's 2024 budget for pilot project. So this one that he has in here, we're gonna just add in there that it's only up to 10,000, okay? Do you want me to read that more clear?
English language
Yeah.
Classes.
It's gonna be like a bracket up to. Okay, do
Everybody saw
we
the
need to
motion on
have,
the Agenda.
report the back on that?
It's up to the board. Yeah, that's up to the board.
I think that would be a follow-up report, I think. Mark would do that once he's
For
getting
the
the
November
application.
meeting.
In
Okay,
fact, it
the
would
Huron
say that
County,
too.
and further that the Huron County Economic Development Board approved the allocation of 22,250 from the Economic Development Board's 2024 budget for a pilot project for newcomer English language classes, bracket up to $10,000. Newcomer housing needs survey, youth micro funding project program, this one's right here, and agritourism merchandising workshop as outlined in the report. That makes sense, Tina?
Yes,
happy?
thank you. Thanks.
I think she's probably moving that, but. That's your job.
Does everybody understand that motion? Is it okay with Susan's crafting here.
He's very crafty.
Crafting. Great, I have a mover and a seconder for that motion. Moved by Tina, seconded by Councilor McGinn. Any more discussion on the motion? If not, we will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Very good. Thank you to Mark and Rick. Appreciate you being here and all your efforts, the time you spent
you.
putting that together and the extra time you're gonna spend to execute.
No problem.
It's exciting stuff. Good to hear. Right, so, next on the agenda is 10 financial statements. Everybody have a blue at that,
There wasn't any.
There weren't any.
or there wasn't any,
Cannot say that we have.
Close the public session.
so we don't need to do 10. No need for 11, future meeting topics, 12.
So our next meeting is November, and we will bring back that report. We will set 7. We will have a report on our succession planning working group. And possibly our clean energy working group.
That also may be the last board meeting for some of our members, maybe.
Maybe,
For some of our members of county council, as we have an inaugural committee.
that's right.
Yes.
Well, we have a election of warden, which will then cause a shift through.
Have an
May
election.
have an
of
election warden.
warden.
Yes,
We don't know.
so. Any other topics that the board would like to?
Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff on the go. Appreciate everybody's support and being at the meeting here.
We appreciate you, Brian.
Absolutely, we do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next meeting then is, as Vicky said, November 7th, 9 AM, right here. And a motion to adjourn the meeting. Moved by
Lynn.
Jamie. Oh, seconded by Lynn. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, great meeting.
Bye,
Mike.
It was a
everyone.
good meeting.
Thanks, Lynn.
A lot of good stuff on the go.